Thank you for coming. It is 7 p.m., and I call the May 22nd, 2023 School Board meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, Board Clerk Maggie Smith, would you please call the roll?
Chris Lau.
Here.
Lindsay Need. Here. Maggie Smith here. Bridget Todd Robbins.
Excused.
Barb Wunsch.
Here.
Crystal Lee.
Here.
Jennifer Deep.
Here.
Khadijah Islam.
Here.
All right, with 6 of the 7 board members present, I declare a quorum. I note that the agenda has been posted, distributed, and sent to the local media. With this in mind, are there any changes to this agenda? I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as published.
So moved.
Okay, Chris has moved.
Second.
Was that Khadijah?
Yep.
Khadijah has seconded to approve the agenda as published. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve the agenda as published, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. The motion to approve the published agenda has passed. All right, this evening we do not have any public participation, so we'll be moving on to the district administrator's report. Dr. Mueller.
All right, well, if you can believe it, it's graduation on Saturday at the Lacrosse Center, so please join us. It's at 1 o'clock. Just want to congratulate all of our graduates and look forward to seeing them to celebrate all their accomplishments through all these years. Also, on Thursday night this week in the Fine Arts Center, starting at 3:30, we are having a little open house with some refreshments and that in celebration of our retirees. We have 18 retirees this year with a combined 370 years of service. So we look forward to celebrating them. So come join us Thursday, May 25th in the Fine Arts Center. Also, our Holmen Area Foundation, we're partnering with them, and we have a golf outing coming up in June. It's going to take place on June 14th at Cedar Creek. Last I heard, I think it's full now. So come join us for the raffles and things that are going on that evening. The other part, what I wanted to share too, Sunday I attended, there was a band concert, a high school band concert over at the Fine Arts Center. I was just thinking back to the day when we had our old Fine Arts Center, and we have over almost double the seating. And when I was sitting in there enjoying the concert, which was amazing, just listening to the talent that these students have, the musical talent, looking around, there's 750 seats, and I want to say almost every seat was filled. So I just wanted to thank the community for all their support for our students and what they do in the arts. And then also congratulations to the Holmen boys golf team. They won the Mississippi Valley Conference Championship. So Crystal maybe will share more about some of that, but just wanted to congratulate them on that. So thank you.
All right, thanks. Moving on to recognition and thank yous. Dr. Mueller.
Yeah, actually, if Jill Mason could come forward and Julie Holman, I'd want to present them with this award that we received. Can you come up and just kind of hold this? Yeah, they're like, they didn't expect this. So this is, we received the 2023 Safety, Security, and Wellness Award, recognizing the great efforts the school district has towards creating healthy and safe learning environments for our students and staff. What this is this, some people outside of our district were visiting, and they recognized how we had boxes in our, we had bathroom boxes to utilize for anonymous reporting in our high school, and we have moved since then to anonymous stop it reporting system. And they were so impressed with the system that we had in place, in that how far along we have come and for how long we've been doing it, that they wanted to recognize our district. So the system is meant to deter and mitigate bullying, cyber abuse, and other inappropriate behaviors. And there's also an app that students can use. So they receive also $1,500 grant to be used for ongoing risk management. So congratulations, great efforts. Thanks. I don't always get to recognize them for their work, so that was fun. All right.
that all? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right, moving on to reports and discussion. Item 9.1, I now welcome Holmen Middle School Principal Ben Tashner to present on the Holmen Middle School ASL program. This item is for report only.
Good evening. So Ben Tashner, Associate Principal and Activities Director at the middle school. And with me tonight, I have Miss Zangel, our adaptive PE teacher. And so one thing that she came to me kind of interested in is starting up a middle school adaptive sports league. So for those of you that don't know, Adaptive Sports League is a club for students with disabilities to be able to participate like their same age peers, but participate in different activities with support that they can be successful. So as we go through, I'm going to let Ms. Zangel kind of walk through kind of what she's been doing with some of our students at the middle school.
All right, so how we came about, my previous experience with ASL, excuse me, was at the high school when I was here about 10 years ago. I volunteered through NHS and was a part of the after-school program. I believe they were practicing over at Viking or Evergreen, and they just needed people to hang out with them after school, so we played board games and got to socialize with the athletes before they headed to practice. So that was my initial experience. Last year I was able to help out with the baseball team as Coach Progetri was on maternity leave. So I helped out last year, and then this past summer I actually helped out at UWL. So it's really grown my passion over the last couple of years. And to give the students experience with Adapted Sports League, we actually went up to the high school for the past few years just to experience the different games. We went to the hockey championship last year, and it was a ton of fun. So this year I really saw the need for having this opportunity for students to participate earlier on at the middle school. So we wrote some grants to the Holmen Area Foundation and the Lacrosse Autism Foundation, and funded nearly most of our baseball and soccer equipment, and about $500 towards our hockey equipment for the winter sports. The next step was to find volunteers that would help out coaching. So we have a great list of volunteers that have helped out this spring with baseball, and then ultimately we had to go find those athletes. So we had about 10 athletes sign up this spring for baseball. So baseball, like I said, we have 10 athletes, 7th, 8th graders, so hopefully next year they'll continue on and bring some of that strength up to the high school. 1 7th grader and 2 6th graders. The picture below there was when we attended the high school game this spring. So they got to actually warm up with the high school team, and then we cheered them on for the game. We practiced for the month of May for about 4 weeks here, and then we are actually playing on Thursday at 3:30. So if you're not doing anything, come on over to the middle school, and you can see some of the talent that we have going on.
So some of our next steps as we've kind of been working together is really kind of figuring out what is the interest level that we have with our athletes, and then what, if we do have that interest, what do those offerings look like? So trying to really kind of follow along with the high school seasons within each sport. So really kind of looking at those. Middle school ASL is new for a lot of middle schools, and so trying to collaborate with different schools in the area on creating some maybe intramural games or just different opportunities for our students based on the interest level. And then as we continue, really kind of looking for that potential funding for our coaches or and athletes as they kind of come on. And then also then working on that practice space. As different seasons get really busy, a lot of gym space, and when the weather's bad, kind of then looking, okay, now where are we going to go? So really wanting to see that interest, but then what does that opportunity look like for them, and where does it best fit?
Like I touched on earlier, game day is this Thursday at the middle school in Gym A. Like Ben said, we don't have a ton of people to play right now, so the students each wrote to a staff member or a parent asking them to play against them on Thursday, so I'm hoping to bring home the win there.
That'll be a fun one.
So here are just some pictures of us practicing at the middle school. And then just a big thank you to all of our volunteer coaches, Karen Burgum, Heather Foley, Kelly Grabowinski, Kate Jesse, and Rachel Seipel. And then a big thank you to Ben Tashner, Jill Mason, Dr. Mueller for helping me get this started, getting the process rolling. And then to Jenny Eichhoff in our office for ordering all of our equipment and helping me out with that. And then both the Holmen Area Foundation, the Lacrosse Autism Foundation, just for their support in the grants to get the equipment. And then parents and guardians for allowing their athletes to participate. And then lastly, the Holmen High School Adapted Sports League team and coaches for allowing us to come play with them before their game. And then they also donated their extra jerseys so that the kids have jerseys to wear on Thursday.
Oh, cute.
So, any questions?
Any questions?
I've got one. Do you guys still have a funding need for equipment?
We do. We do not have all of the hockey equipment quite yet.
Okay.
So we, could use some more for that.
Something that we're kind of researching too and seeing what other grant opportunities we have out there, so that we can have that equipment and then just kind of work having that available if based on if we have our interest there for students to participate.
Any other questions?
I might have missed this, but how many other area middle schools have a middle school team?
Right now, there aren't any other middle schools. West Salem has a couple of their middle schoolers that play on the high school team just because of their numbers. But we are working with some of the local ADs and other coaches to get that started.
Yeah, I love this idea, giving these students an opportunity to be able to participate in these types of sports. And I'd actually love to see this run all the way down through the elementary schools, because kids at the elementary school also don't have those same opportunities outside of school at the end of the day, because they're not able to keep up with their peers in the regular sports. So I think what you're doing is great, and maybe it can continue to grow in the future. So,
Thank you.
all right, that's all
Awesome.
we got.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving on to item 9.2, Executive Director of Instructional Services, Kim Edwards, along with District ELA teachers, will present the ELA curriculum update. This item is for report only.
All right. Good evening. So I'm really here more in a supporting role. I'm very quickly going to be turning it over to our team leads here. I'll let them introduce themselves quickly, and then we'll go ahead and dig in.
My name is Tracy Sommerfelt, and I'm the district literacy coach.
Dace McAndrews, middle school, ELA.
I'm Jamie Ocasco, high school English.
Okay.
So the ELA curricular work really started in 2020 when Wisconsin published the revised English language arts standards. We tend to operate about a year behind so that the state can really say, yep, these are the published standards that we're going to go forward with. So in 2021-22, we started with our self-study where we looked at all kinds of data and program gaps. This last year we spent in curriculum writing, and then moving forward, we'll go into that resource review and purchasing for the resources that will best match our needs for teaching the standards. So you can see here just a quick table of contents and who we are. I want to briefly review the self-study process. So we really took a close look at the revised standards. We completed a gap analysis to see if any of the standards had changed and in which ways they had changed. We analyzed our data, looking at all of our achievement data as well as our subgroup data to see where our needs were, where our gaps in learning were. And then at each level, we completed a literature review based on their needs for professional development and what each level had decided. So you can see in elementary, we took a look at the teaching reading sourcebook. Middle school read 4 essential studies, beliefs and practices to reclaim student agency. And the high school had 2 different books that they jigsawed on the universal design for learning. After that, we really identified what are the priority standards where we want to put our focus into. In looking at the 2020 standards for English language arts in Wisconsin, the state took some key shifts in that area. The first being that we value the identities of our students, and we want to recognize and sustain those identities and the identities of others. That all students are flexible users of language and can be responsive based on their audience and their purpose. We want to use complex texts, both literary and informational, and build our academic vocabulary, grounding our learning in textual evidence, so always going back to the text to cite why they think they know what they understand what they've read, and then building our knowledge through that use of text. In addition, the state developed overarching statements around the variety and flexibility in literacy. These overarching statements pull together individual standards under a common goal. That last one was the big overarching standard for all of ELA, but it also has overarching standards in each of the domains. And you can see that flexibility in use and then the purposes for reading, writing, speaking, and listening in the use of language. There are 4 ELA strands, K-12, reading, writing, speaking, and listening in language, and then 1 additional strand in K-5, and those are the reading foundational skills. Those standards are set up in this way on every page so that we can understand what they are. So they're broken down by the strand, the grade level, the standard number, and then sometimes after that standard number, we have a list of substandards A through J.
Often A through J.
Yes. This is an example of one standard and how it flows from K to 12. So you can see that in kindergarten, the standard from reading starts with prompting and support, develop and answer questions about a text. Over time, it grows so that by the time they get our 4th graders, they should be able to locate and refer to relevant details and evidence when explaining what the text says. Up in the middle school, then we're going to cite that textual evidence that strongly supports an analysis of what the text says, both explicitly and implicitly, and all the way up to our grade 11 and 12 standard, where we want them to cite that evidence that strongly supports the analysis and make logical inferences, including where the text is ambiguous, and develop questions for that deeper understanding. You can see here that in grades K-8, the standards are by single grade, but that they are grade banded in 9-10 and 11-12. Sometimes when the standard is the same, it depends on the complexity of the text that we're using as we're teaching that standard in order to grow students' learning. That extra strand in K-5 falls within the reading, and those are the reading foundational skills standards. So those focus on the things that students need to be able to do to decode and read the text, including things like print concepts, following print from left to right, phonological awareness, identifying individual sounds and words, phonics and word recognition, knowing the spelling correspondences for the different sounds and how they can be put together and why, and then all the way up to that fluency piece. So being able to read with expression and knowing when to pause based on the author's punctuation, and also really understanding what it is that they're reading. These are the anchor standards for reading. They're organized into 3 different groups: key ideas and details, the craft and structure, and the integration of knowledge and ideas. Writing is also organized. We have 9 standards here in 3 groups. Our text types and purposes, so students write for a variety of purposes, including writing narrative to share their own experiences or fictional experiences, to share information through informational text, and then also to share their opinions and their ideas and eventually be able to persuade their readers. In speaking and listening, we have 2 different groups: our comprehension and collaboration, so those skills that they need to participate in conversations and in group, both one-on-one, small group, and whole group. And then that presentation of knowledge and ideas, so how can they share their learning? And then our anchor standards for language include our knowledge of language, and again goes back to the different contexts of making choices based on meaning or style, so that idea of flexibility. Vocabulary acquisition and use is one of those key shifts as well, but learning that academic vocabulary, and then the conventions of standardized English, so our grammar and our conventions for print. At the elementary level, in order to ensure that we had representation from all of our schools and all of our grade levels, we work in committee teams, and I was a part of all of those committee teams. So you can see we have teachers from kindergarten through 5th grade on our teams at each of the 4 buildings. In addition, this year we made it a priority to include our specialists, so our special education teachers, our EL teachers, our interventionists, so that they have an understanding of what the grade level standards say at all grades. Koichiro Matsuura was the former director of UNESCO, And he believes, and we believe too, that literacy is inseparable from opportunity, and opportunity is inseparable from freedom. The freedom is both freedom from ignorance, oppression, poverty, and freedom to do new things, to make choices, and to learn. Literacy is an equity piece for us because all students need to be able to read and write and communicate. As we looked at our key considerations, we thought back to our self-study, and we wanted to keep that in mind moving forward. So we knew that the state had made a big shift. They actually moved the reading foundational standards from the very end of the document to the very beginning of the document, knowing that before a student can comprehend what they're reading, they have to be able to read what's on the page. So we made some shifts already this year in our instructional practices and the resources that we're using in K2 and also in 3-5 around our word study. So really breaking down words and being able to know why and how they come together in order to read them. When we picked our priority standards, they were selected on that criteria of readiness, endurance, leverage, and assessment. We know that we want to integrate our strands and our standards and our skills all together so that it's not being learned in isolation, but instead, because that's not how literacy works. It's not, this is my writing time, this is my reading time, but it all has to come together. We value the inclusion of all learners and seek to improve the scaffolds and supports that we provide so that all students can achieve growth and success towards their grade level standards. And we want to make sure that we're using text that is representative of our students and the world outside of Holmen as well, their experiences, and give them those opportunities to learn about multiple different people and worlds. When we took a look at our standards plans, knowing that, whoops, I'm gonna have you go back. Thank you.
Sorry.
Knowing that we have a lot of work to do and revisions to make, we did not organize these into teaching units at this time because we don't know what resources are going to be the best resources for teaching our students. So we took our priority standards and we broke those apart into their learning targets and the supporting standards. This allows us to be flexible with these priority standards and the learning targets with whatever resources we select moving forward. The learning targets are arranged in a progression from simple to complex and really help us break apart that big, wordy academic language standard into manageable pieces to be able to know exactly what our students need in order for them to move forward and learn. This is an example of one of our second grade standards plans. This comes from our reading foundational skills. This is standard 3A, so it's in the phonics and word recognition, and it's to distinguish long and short vowels when reading regularly spelled one-syllable words. And you can see that we start with the idea that every syllable has to have a vowel, and we move all the way up to being able to read regularly spelled one-syllable words with short and long vowels.
So at the middle school, we followed a similar process. We have our team. This includes all of the language arts teachers, middle school, 3 at each grade level. And then we also included special education and interventionists for reading and writing, and then our talented and gifted teachers, so that we could all work together to reach and make sure that we were covering information for all of the students that we have in the building. The considerations that we looked at, one of the things that we focused on was making sure that we had a strong progression of standards and alignment, especially in our priority standards, being in the middle, the middle child, so to speak. We looked at where things were progressing from kindergarten through 5th grade, and then we need to make the bridge from 5th grade up through the middle school, and then we also met with the high school a year ago to see where it is that we needed to be. And so we spent part of this year making sure that the progression from where they come into the middle school at 5th grade and where they leave to head to the high school is a strong progression with the right depth of knowledge. We also identified that, that writing was an area that we wanted to focus on increasing our student stamina, making sure that we were aligning the standards in their progression, especially for depth of knowledge and the types of writing that we were, or the reading that we were using to support the writing, that those progressed very smoothly from the 6th grade to the 8th grade and really from 5th grade to 9th grade. So we have worked on including more daily writing, not necessarily every single day, but including that on a lot of different days. We see students recently having more trouble with stamina. For example, at the beginning of the year, when I told students that we were going to do a writing and it was going to be 5 minutes long, they thought that that was the end of the world. And oh my, 5 minutes. And now we do 10 minutes and sometimes longer and they just like, all right, that's fine, whatever. So it's not as hard for them to continue writing for that length of time. Knowing that we don't always just have short periods of writing, and we feel like there may be some correlation with that piece of stamina showing through in all content areas and possibly affecting how they look at the Wisconsin Forward tests. Not being some of the reading that they need to do, some of the writing they need to do is fairly lengthy, and some students just haven't wanted to spend the time to complete those things. And so building that stamina is something that we've worked hard on and that we've talked with Mr. Vogler and the administration at the middle school on about possibly working on as an entire building. So we also want to make sure that we are exploring a variety of authors and genres and perspectives. We want to make sure that every different kind of perspective, all different groups of people are represented. We feel like we have a really strong start in that area already, but we did see some overlapping of authors and some of the genres that we maybe spend more time on throughout the 6th through 8th grade that we wanted to just try to spread things out a little bit and cover some more areas. We also wanted to make sure that we are really focusing on developing critical and analytical skills for all the domains of language arts. So we wanted to strengthen that progression, the depth of knowledge, so that they have greater mastery of critical thinking and analysis before they get to 9th grade. It's a tricky thing for kids to move beyond just what's there in the text to being able to think critically and analytically about that. And so we work hard to move them through that process in all the grades of middle school. We also have, we really value the ability for all students to be a part of the inclusion classroom, that universal classroom piece. So we spent some time as we were going through the different standards and which were going to be our priority standards, trying to identify areas where we needed some additional scaffolding to support all students in the classroom, not just those who need additional help, but also those who already know or catch on very quickly, and how we can make the classroom a learning environment for everyone. We also, some of our standards hit a little bit on technology, but something that we noticed at the middle school is that we do a lot of similar kinds of technology. And so we wanted to make sure that students have a variety of technology experiences, that they don't just know how to do Google Slides. And we also noticed that kids don't always know as much about things as they think they do. And we were going to have students just insert a table, and it was interesting how many students didn't know how to insert a table. So I think we assume that kids come with a lot of technology knowledge that they don't necessarily have. And so we laid out a lot of things, and we're working with our LMC director, Jackie Pankhurst, and others to make sure that we're covering a wide variety of skills. You can see the different units that we currently have as we move into the next years and the future pieces of our curriculum cycle. We may alter some of those or switch them around a little bit, but these are some pretty solid units that we have at the middle school at the moment. We follow a similar plan to as the elementary does. The unit and the duration those essential questions that we want to cover in each unit, the priority standards, and then the learning targets that break things down a little bit more into exactly what it is we need students to learn, supporting standards, and then we also have the academic vocabulary, and then we also included the assessments that we intend to include. And then this is an 8th grade standard, or an 8th grade unit that we have on argumentative writing and speaking. We do a variety of things with argumentative writing and speaking, and so this is how that looks for us.
How are you guys this evening? Is it okay if I stand? Because I left my booster seat in the car. I think I'm just going to be a floating head. All right. As stated before, my name is Jamie Okusko. I teach ELA at the high school, mostly with the sophomores and the seniors. You can see our team is listed up on the screen over there, and there are quite a few of us broken out into the cores of the 9, 10, and the 11 team. And then we all teach some kind of elective. In looking at where we wanted to go with the standards, I joined the team just last year. And prior to my arrival, they had done a self-study and had mirrored a lot of the things you've heard in the elementary and the middle school level about wanting to be all-inclusive, making sure we're starting to bridge those gaps, really identifying using data where our gaps are in the learning, and then working collaboratively between the teams to make sure that we can enhance our students' learning and make sure we can cover those gaps so we don't lose any students behind. As such, then, we focus on the standards. And this is kind of a new thing. In a previous district I taught at, I had the opportunity to take the 2020 standards and then was asked to compare them to all the other standards out there. So I sat across my kitchen table, and there was college and career readiness, and there was Common Core, and there was AP Board, and then there was the 2020. And I started looking standard by standard to see really what the differences are. Interestingly enough, what I found is a lot of the language of the 2020 actually mirrors a lot of the College Board language, which is where we want to be. We don't want to stay here. We want to get our students here. And by mirroring that language, it gives us the opportunity to really increase the rigor. In the focus on the standards, what you'll notice is the discussion amongst a lot of the teams hasn't been the way it used to be. What do you teach? I teach the standards. Well, yeah, but what story do you teach? The story that fits the standards. In the past, it used to be, what do you teach? Oh, we teach To Kill a Mockingbird, which we might if it fits the standard. And so in rearranging the way we approach the curriculum has also helped us be better teachers, because in that essence, we don't have the opportunity to flatline anymore. Every group of students who comes in is a different group. So we can't say, yep, this is going to be the story. Because with each group that comes in, we have different elements to look at, and so those stories fluctuate from time. Keeping the standard at the focus of what we do is our #1 priority. We also then look, as I'd said, to find literature to represent. We use that literature then to enhance our writing. Our writing is not, we're going to write today. It has multiple purposes and covers multiple dimensions of the standards that we're looking at. It's all inclusive. And then, of course, we use that language, the writing, to utilize those language skills. Much like the other areas, we recognize that the literature has a number of themes that overlap. So what we want to avoid is what we call the danger of a single story. Oh, this is it, and this is the only one. What we're helping our students to see is that while this is a great story and this is a great story, they have overarching ideas. So for example, in English 10 right now, while we are reading a novel, we also read 4 supplemental short stories and charged the students with the task of figuring out how they overlap. Eventually then, of course, we're looking to ensure that our texts include a multiple of levels and a multiple of areas. We want to make sure that our students see representations of themselves in the literature in which they are reading, because it helps engagement. Once you get to the high school level, you have the 9, 10, and 11 are required. Like Ms. Andrews had said, we have worked with how do you get the word out? We're connecting with the teams to make sure we're not missing something. So the 9 got to meet with the 10, which is vastly important to understand where did we miss something. And then the 9 and the 10 met, and the 8 and the 9 and the 9 and 11, and so on and so forth down the road. And when you look at the overlapping of the standards where it says 9, 10, it's very important for us to work with the 9 team to make sure that while the 9 might be here, we have to take it that one step higher, and then 10 to 11 and so on and so forth. We also have a number of electives, as you can see up there on the screen. There's a lot being taught. We took then, thank you, each unit and started breaking them down. Each team did their own sets of units. There we go, sorry about that. I work on the 10 team, and so as you can see there, we did short stories, memoirs, plays, and nonfiction. And again, when you go into the different areas, you'll see that they each have their own part of emphasis. And again, and okay. There are a lot of electives. The unit plans mirrored so that they're very accessible to everyone looking at them, so that if a 8 team and a 9 team get together, we can understand what we're looking at. Again, one thing that you'll note if you go through, say, the 10 curriculum is simply this. You're not going to see a story attached to that. So for example, one of our standards is to critically look at how an argument is presented in the literature. Well, there are a number of different plays that do that. And while the honors students might be reading Othello, a different group of students is also reading, say, 12 Angry Men, but we're teaching the same standard. The literature is there, it's great. We use the literature as a vehicle to teach the standards. And so in looking through these, it'll tell you, break down the priority standard, and then of course what the learning target's going to be and what we have the students do with those. Any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you.
I have
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me more about how you then make that decision every semester or every quarter with the class that you have, as far as what you decide you're going to use as that vehicle?
A lot of it depends on, we look at the student who we have in front of us or the group of students we have in front of us. Taking the time to actually get to know them really early on. So each classroom teacher might start with a different story. So for example, I'm trying to think of what I did, because it's all just kind of blending together right now. Yesterday I had breakfast, I know that. So we might have all started, say, teaching borders. And I very quickly saw that particular story was very simplistic for the group of students I had. So then I immediately moved to, say, The Rights of Streets of Memphis, or for my honors students, I immediately moved into Stephen Crane's Maggie, A Girl of the Streets, because it mirrored the level of complexity and rigor that we wanted to see out of that group. Now, I might have started with Borders, another colleague of mine might have started with a different story, but we quickly assessed that, where they are. A lot of it also is in classroom design. So in Ms. Okusko's class, you don't get to hide silently in the back. They read, annotate, and actually answer a set of analytical questions before we ever discuss the story. We're not in the day anymore where a child will read chapter 1 of a book and come in and, who's the main character? We're far beyond that. They'll read 4, 5, 6 chapters and accompany with a short story, and then the question might be, you may have noticed, or who's the main character? Everybody thinks it's a boy. Why do you think it's a boy? Well, the language that they use. Well, why is that? Well, while Ms. Okusko redacted the swear words, why were the swear words important to develop that character? Now, can you think of another story in which the author uses that perspective of language to give us a glimpse of who that character really is? So we're really pushing on those higher order thinking questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was super informative. I loved your presentation.
If you ever want to stop by 213, come on over.
I know. I needed you as a teacher.
All right.
Excellent job.
Thank you. Not quite done.
Oh, they're not quite done?
Did you have?
That group's done, right?
That group is done.
Okay.
All right, so moving on to
So-
9.3, Kim will now, along with the district PE teachers, give the PE curriculum update.
I think I'm going to leave it just to Jared so we don't have the awkward clicking issue. So.
Hi, I'm Jared Begneski. I'm a high school physical education and health teacher. I'll be presenting the K-12 PE curriculum that's been updated over the past couple of years. This is our timeline of events, which is very similar to the last group with new standards coming out in 2020. So as I'm going through the three different levels, elementary, middle, and high school, you'll see a very common theme is priority standards, realigning standards as a bulk of our work. K-12 big picture items, like I said, aligning new state standards that Wisconsin developed, standard gap analysis, prioritizing those standards, infusing social emotional learning and those standards within our curriculum, K-12 vertical alignment with all three levels. Through self-study, we went through a facility and equipment needs process and developing common standard-based assessments at all three levels. These are the 5 standards for physical education in Wisconsin. They mirror the national standards. Big picture items, just to briefly go over all 5. Standard 1 relates to motor skills and movement, so the actual like physical movement piece. Standard 2 is more about the knowledge base. Standard 3 is the fitness avenue and health enhancing level. Standard 4 is personal and social responsibility, being respectful and responsible in the movement environment. And standard 5 is recognizing the value of physical activity as it relates to your life. The structure, so if you opened up the curriculum document, the structure, the breakdown kind of looks like this. This is just an example of standard 5, the valuing standard. And under there's a learning priority. So this one in particular is an example of the middle school. The learning priority is health and well-being. And then under each grade level, it breaks it down specifically to a performance indicator. And then from there, we make it even more specific with our learning targets. Elementary, so I'll get into each 3 levels a little bit more specifically. This is kind of the key work that the elementary team did. Again, they analyzed the new state standards. They found that they were trying to do like everything with the old set of standards and didn't really cover a whole lot in depth, but like more exposure. So they really tried to narrow down, these are our priorities and we're gonna go really in depth with them. They redid their common assessments to, they used to be a lot of paper pencil, and from my understanding now it's gonna be more demonstrate and show if you meet the standard. They created new units and updated their old ones to match the new standards. Discussed ways to bring more lifetime activities and connections within the community. And create a new scope and sequence. This is just kind of the key aspects or the nuts and bolts of the scope and sequence, or how they broke it down. So in a minute, I'll show you their units, but at all of their units, the student is either emerging, maturing, or applying. And those are the units of the new curriculum. Some the same, some updated, and some new. Long list. This is an example of a unit block plan at the elementary level. Specifically for a 4th and 5th grade snowshoeing or cross-country skiing unit. It mirrors the pretty standard district form with unit objectives, priority standards, and learning targets. Middle school, again, reassessing the state standards and developing learning targets. reorganizing their units to match priority targets. They worked with the elementary level and the high school level, being the ones in the middle, to vertically align the curriculum throughout the district. They redesigned their units to meet more standards and are updating their formative and summative assessments to align with those standards and targets. This is an example of their scope and sequence, this one specifically being their invasion and tactics unit. As you can see, they have a 3-year rotation. So year 1, the game or activity is team handball. 6th, 7th, and 8th graders will all get that particular activity. From my understanding, they do it that way so each kid guarantees their exposure to all of their activities and their units throughout their middle school time. And it makes things a lot more efficient for them at that level as well. So. And the year 2 game is chook ball. It's not a misspelled word. These are their new units and updated units at the middle school. And this is an example of a unit block plan that they developed at the middle school specifically for their Fitness for Life unit. Moving on to high school, again, alignment with new state standards and prioritizing those standards. We updated at the high school our scope and sequence for better alignment with our priority standards and summative assessments. We're building and updating common formative and summative assessments within the gaps that we analyzed. We updated our course offerings based on a look at our 5-year enrollment data on our electives. So the electives are student choice, essentially. We have a series of classes, which I'll show you, but the ones that run are based on the ones the kids choose. So we just looked at the past 5 years and decided which ones were high enrollment and cut some out and decided to prioritize some other ones. And then we updated our Adventure Ed and Outdoor Pursuits course. We're working with UW Oshkosh to make it a dual credit option. These are our course offerings at the high school. And this is an example, again, of a block plan at the high school. Specifically, this one is for elective team sports, PE elective class, and a sport ed model unit. So pretty standard with the elementary and middle school with unit objectives, priority standards, and learning targets. And this is the work that we're still going to be doing in the upcoming year. And I can do my best to answer questions. Again, I'm at the high school. I am the curriculum. I oversee the whole curriculum, but obviously I worked a lot closer with the high school group. Joey Frederick, elementary, was kind of the lead, did a really good job, and then Heather Foley at the middle school. So,
All right, any questions?
I have 2 for you. One, I was just curious what PE 10-12 skinny was. Was that just like an accelerated elective? I saw it in the course.
Yep, that's a good question. So number 11.
Yeah.
So at the high school, there's currently block classes and there's skinny classes that are half the time of a block essentially. So we put that class in there as to help supplement the schedule essentially, to get students in PE and get their credit. I can tell you the curriculum is more team and individual sports based for that one. And then there is some fitness as well.
Thank you. And then the other thing I was just gonna ask, would you be able to say just a little more about like what adapted PE looks like? in the
Yeah,
high
yep, absolutely. So I'm also an adapted PE teacher at the high school. So I guess starting with that, because that's what's most familiar for me, we have an adapted PE course that I teach year round, first hour in a block, for students who need that smaller group to be successful. And then other placement is based on their IEP and their IEP goals. So for some students, that might be inclusion in the regular PE setting with support from an additional adapted PE teacher. The other option that we have, number 6 on here, is a class called Universal Adventure and Outdoor Pursuits. That class is probably one of our most creative ones from our curriculum. It's half students that receive special education services and then half general ed student population. And it's kind of like a peer mentor type philosophy. So that's what APE looks like at the high school. At the middle school, it's more, I'm looking at our middle school adapted PE teacher right now. It's more one-on-one or inclusion, are the two, mostly inclusion. And then at the elementary is pretty much, there you go.
Thank you.
Other
Any
questions?
I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 9.4. Director of Transportation Dan Garrett will present the results of the recent bus bid. This item is for approval on tonight's consent agenda.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, I don't have my slide up here. Sorry. Well, first of all, congratulations to all this year's graduates. Pretty exciting. I just came back with the results from the bus bids that we went for this coming school year or next school year. We had 3 responses to our bid requests. We had Wisconsin Bus Sales, Mid-State, and Nelson Buses. They all came in pretty close to the same price. There was a little bit of fluctuation based on the model and everything that was included with it. This year, we're going for a diesel bus, and we are going to be recommending the purchase of a Bluebird bus, a 77-passenger Bluebird bus. This bus is going to run at approximately $130,000. It's $129,363, and all that's going to be taken out of the $160,000 referendum budget, with the remaining left over will be used for the purchase of a wheelchair accessible van. We decided to go with the diesel bus this year because our propane fleet is pretty big, and we're running out of buses on long trips as we're going to Green Bay. Any questions on that one?
I guess,
Pretty.
can you remind, we usually get two, purchase
Usually
two
we
buses?
get 2 buses. We were going for the purchase of a bus and a van this year to help accommodate some of our special needs students, a wheelchair accessible van. And so that's what the remaining balance is going to be used for.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Any other questions? That looks like it's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to item 9.5, Executive Director of Finance and Operations Julie Holmen will present the 23-24 preliminary budget. This item will not appear on a consent agenda.
Good evening. I lost my audience. Wonder why. All right, so tonight I'm presenting on the 23-24 preliminary budget. Preliminary is the key word here. There's a lot of unknowns that we'll talk about a little bit as we go through this, but our budget development calendar does call for a preliminary budget to be presented to the board in the spring. And so I am here tonight to do that for you. The development of the preliminary budget began with our forecast variables that came to the school board in January. The preliminary budget primarily focuses on Fund 10, which is our general operational fund, our biggest fund, and Fund 27, special education. I'll also touch on 39, which is our debt service, 42, which is the construction fund. Fund 46 is long-term capital improvement trust fund. Fund 50 is school nutrition, and Fund 80 is our community service fund. Fund 21, when we get to it on the screen here, does not have a budget, and I'll explain that when we get there. Conservative assumptions have been applied for state and federal funding. The revenue limit per student, categorical aid per student, and special education state reimbursement have been forecasted also conservatively as we wait for the state of Wisconsin to adopt their budget. This budget is preliminary. Due to that great uncertainty in the state revenue for K-12 education, I will highlight only major changes in the subtotals. This is one of several budgets that does come to the board throughout the year. It'll be followed by a proposed budget in August, so hopefully we know more from the state of Wisconsin by then. And then the original budget comes to you at the annual meeting and budget hearing in October. I also bring revised budgets throughout the year. The budget has been provided, preliminary budget has been provided in DPI summary format, and so the slides on the screen are primarily snips from that DPI summary that's been provided in your board packet. We will start with the general operating fund, or Fund 10, and work through the DPI summary format of the school district budget. So lines 1 through 8 at the beginning of the summary format are the fund balance for the general fund. Since the fund balance for 23-24, which is the far right column, is the prior year ending fund balance, it's important to note that the 22-23 ending fund balance, or the middle column of numbers, is all based on the current estimated budget. We will not know the actual fund balance until we are finished with this fiscal year and are audited. The columns 2 and 3 are prior year actual, or 21-22 audited for general fund. And column 3 is, again, the current year budget that we are still in the middle of. The fund balance is a measure on June 30th of each year. This is a one-time snapshot and includes significant receivables. Fund balance does include cash, cash equivalents, and non-cash components. For example, when we end the fiscal year on June 30th, we always have several million in taxes receivable, other receivables, and federal grant reimbursement receivables. Line 8 is the total ending fund balance as of June 30 in each of those 3 years. Fund balance is designated into 5 categories, and those designations do come forward to the board in June, or estimated designations. The combined balances in the general fund are estimated at $15.2 million, or about 26.9% of general fund expenditures for next year, June 30th of 2024, based on this preliminary budget. So we'll begin with general fund revenue, local sources. Line 11 is the taxes and demonstrates the estimated general fund increase of 2022-23 tax revenue. That line includes mobile home taxes, but the general fund tax levy is estimated at about $12.5 million of that $12.7 million. This is dependent on student membership, revenue limit per pupil, local authority to exceed the revenue limit through operational referenda. Student membership, equalized property value, and the revenue limit per pupil are uncertain for 23-24. These estimates will be confirmed in September and October for our original budget. The total line for local sources revenue in the general fund is $13,373,000. The next source of revenue for the general fund is other. You see there's only one line filled out in this summary, and that is the open enrollment into Holmen, estimated at not too much more than the current year, but about $1.8 million. The open enrollment estimated transfer is $8,265 for a regular education pupil and $13,141 for a special education pupil. The next source of revenue in the general fund is state sources. Line 33 is our general state aid. Conservative estimates using approximately 50% of the governor's proposal for increased revenue limit per pupil and categorical aid per pupil is used in this estimate. Combination of state aid and local levy make up the total amount allowable under the revenue limit without exemptions. And for example, then, if the state aid goes up, then the general fund levy is going to go down, all else being equal if we don't have a change in our revenue limit from the state of Wisconsin. The 3-year average student full-time equivalency is used in the revenue limit formula. And then 40% of the summer school FTE is used in the revenue limit formula. The per pupil categorical aid is estimated on line 38 to be approximately $3.1 million. Subtotal of revenue from state sources is estimated at $36,826,000. The next slide is the federal source of revenue for the general fund, estimated at just under $2.4 million. Federal awards are revised in the budget annually to include any new federal allocation and then revised to include any carryover information that we receive from the Department of Public Instruction. The large number on line 42 is the final spending out of the ESSER III dollars, which is funding from the federal government to support pandemic relief. That funding does expire, ESSER III funding does expire in the end of the next fiscal year or September of 2024. And so this is demonstrating a complete spend out of those dollars. Out of that $2 million, there is $1.3 million budgeted for HVAC project at Viking Elementary. That was part of our referendum conversations last fall in offsetting part of the tax levy and asking for some of that money for that project at Viking or the middle school to go through ESSER funding for that purpose. And then the balance is reserved for the evidence-based improvement strategies as required under the language of ESSER III. Federal awards are always on a reimbursement basis, which means we have to spend it and then claim it to be reimbursed, which is why I mentioned earlier, June 30th, we always have a federal receivable on the books waiting for those claim payments. One other area on the federal sources I want to bring to your attention is line 43, and you see that increasing. So several years ago, our Title I funding was reduced, and that is based on poverty levels within our community. And we did receive less Title I money, but we didn't reduce our staff. So this will be a shift back to coding a little bit more of our Title I services and the staff that provide them to the grant itself. So you see that increasing. I think it's supposed to about double, and that was news that Kim Edwards received a couple weeks ago from the State Department. The summary of total revenues and other financing sources in the general fund is estimated at $54,682,000 for the 23-24 year. Next, I'll go through the corresponding general fund expenditures in Fund 10, beginning on line 59 of the summary. The assumptions that are included to date in the instruction include our increase of 4.7% in health insurance premium, 5.99% in dental insurance premium, employer cost, and then quite modest wage assumptions. As you know, we have not negotiated and settled with the educator union yet, and we have not made base wage determination increases for July 1, all somewhat dependent on what the state does for education funding for the next biennium. What is also included in here includes our special education, our educator substitutes and our educational assistant substitutes that serve in these areas. We also have contracted substitutes through Teachers on Call coded in other areas throughout the budget, because if they're federally funded, then they are coded to a $430,000, which is a different section of the budget, and I'll point that out when I get to it. Or it's coded to special education, which is in Fund 27. But so when we talk about total cost of positions in our school district, they could be in instruction, they could be in support services, and they could be in our substitute contracted services. Total increase, or the total cost for subtotal instruction preliminarily is $23,905,000. Next is the support sources, excuse me. So this includes pupil services, business services, our facilities, instructional services, technology, central services, all of our nursing counselors, social workers, any of those support pieces. And it is estimated at $20,653,000. If you take note on line 71 for business administration, that actually includes all of our facilities and transportation, and you'll notice that it is increasing. That is the net change. So I mentioned ESSER 3, part of that is going towards HVAC project in the amount of 1.3 million, and that's where that would be coded as far as function within our budget requirement, and it's actually the net change. This year, we're doing a number of projects, carryover from prior year for different heating and air conditioning at Viking in the middle school, as well as a bathroom remodel, a new van purchase that we purchased last December, and a mower. So those sort of one-time things are going away, and this ESSER project is coming on. So the net change there in business administration is about $200,000. Next is the non-program transactions, estimated at $12 million. The interfund transfer to special education is estimated to increase by several $100,000. Next year, we have a number of increases in special education contracted placements out of district that are anticipated, and so that's increasing the cost to Fund 27. As many of you are aware, Fund 27 cannot go into a deficit position, which means interfund transfer from the general fund needs to increase year over year. The next item is on line 78. That is our instructional service payments, and that is primarily the cost of open enrollment out of the School District of Holmen. And so when I showed you revenue, I showed you open enrollment in revenue, and now this is the open enrollment out expenditure to other public school districts in the state of Wisconsin that residents of Holmen students are attending. The total expenditures under the general fund in the preliminary budget for 23-24 are $56,590,000. This is a summary of the first slide, which was the fund balance. So the estimated fund balance plus revenue for the year minus expenditures is the estimated balance June 30th of 2024 of $15.2 million. $15.2 million is about 26.9%. The expenditures currently do exceed revenue by $1,908,000. So in the last couple of years, we have had positive impact on fund balance through influx of federal funding. You are aware that that federal funding is expiring. And careful planning of one-time expenditures, drawing down that fund balance, assures retention of sufficient resources as we move forward. As I said earlier, the Special Projects Fund, or Fund 21, does not have a budget. The reason for this is because this is our gift account and our scholarship account. It depends fully on donations and fundraisers, and they're allowed in each of those categories to carry over their dollars. And so we have over 150, I think, different clubs, groups, scholarships, et cetera, within our Fund 21. These are all reconciled as of June 30th, and their carryover balance becomes their new budget. So that'll be shared with you in the fall. Next is the Special Education Fund, Fund 27. As I mentioned earlier, this fund is not allowed to go into a deficit position, and so there's an interfund transfer from the general fund, which is why you see a zero fund balance on lines 92 and 93. The total revenue and expense estimated for 23-24 for instructional costs and tuition and placements and substitutes is $10.2 million. The debt service fund is Fund 39. This is where we account for all principal and interest due on our bonds and our notes. The estimated revenue in debt service is $8,917,000. This does include $1.2 million of debt premium paid on the notes and the bonds last February. DPI does allow us to defer that revenue by a year. And so we are going to recognize that revenue in 23-24, and then that aligns with the payment of principal and interest based on the notes and the bonds that we just recently borrowed this year for the 22 voter-approved referendum projects. The estimated expenditures in the debt fund for 23-24 is $11.6 million. Again, that's partially levy, partially debt premium, and then partially fund balance reserves that we have within the Fund 39. The remaining indebtedness, which is the bottom right-hand corner of the chart on the screen, June 30th of 2024, is $59,145,000. I threw in an extra chart here for you, and this is our principal schedule and balance for debt service. I just wanted you to see what is outstanding. That tiny little sliver on the bottom corner, it's kind of gray, or I don't know what color it is, blue on my screen, I guess. That is the refunded debt. A couple of years ago, we refunded the outstanding debt and shortened the term on primarily the Prairie View construction. And so that'll be paid off in the next fiscal year. And then we have the blue, which is the addition, the 2019 high school addition and remodel. And then we have pink, which is the notes that we just did this year. They have a much shorter term. And the purple is the $35 million general obligation construction bonds going out currently to 2042 or 20-year debt. Next is the capital projects Fund 42 budget. This also includes revenue in Fund 46. They lump them all the 40s together, neither of which, oh, I guess 46 is on the screen. So Fund 42 is where we account for our construction expenditures and interest revenue while we are under construction. So we'll be using Fund 42 for the next 3 years until the referendum projects that we are just starting are completed. And then this gets zeroed out. Any extra, if there is any, for Fund 42 has to be transferred to the debt fund to pay off principal commitments. And then it just kind of sits idle till we do it again. So Fund 42 is sort of a temporary one during the construction time period. And then Fund 46 is the Long-Term Capital Trust Fund. We do not currently have any expenses in the Long-Term Trust Fund because we have to wait 5 years. For those of you that were on the board 3 years ago when we adopted that fund, we have to wait 5 years before we can spend out of it. As far as revenue in the Long-Term Capital Trust Fund, I retained the $250,000, which is the current year transfer. So that is built into the budget to help with those future capital needs. And then I'm going to go back to Fund 42 just for a minute. So our expenses that you see on the screen of $20.1 million on line 180, that is the estimated draw schedule of our construction projects during the next fiscal year, July 1 through June 30th. So that's how much they think we're going to spend on those projects over the next fiscal year. Next, we have Fund 50, the School Nutrition or Food Service Fund. The estimated revenue budget in the Food Service Fund is $3 $3,745,000, and estimated expenditures are $3,774,000. So there is an intent to draw down this fund balance a little bit. The state allows us to have 3 months' worth of expenses, and the last couple of years, there's been such great participation in school nutrition that the fund balance got a little bit higher than the state would prefer. So we do have a 3-year plan submitted and approved by the State Department on how we will bring down the fund balance within the food service fund. And that does include equipment purchasing for those kitchens that are being remodeled under referendum. So there will be some support there from Fund 50 for equipment within those kitchens. Lastly, we have the Community Service Fund, which is Fund 80. A few years back, we opened this Community Service Fund and began using it to support the Sale to Success program at the Holmen area BGC. This is supported through levy dollars and in conjunction with the School District of Holmen. So Jill has had great participation with the Boys and Girls Club over the last few years. It's a program that was a little bit slow to get going because of pandemic and the inability to be in person. And now each year seems to be a little bit stronger, a little more of our intentions coming through within those planning areas. So what we have here is an estimate of $150,000 in revenue. I still left it at $100,000 in expenditures until we meet with them to see what their plans are, if there's any plans for expansion or need for additional support. So again, this is to help support the community's Sale to Success program that's open, because it is funded through community service. That means it's open to all resident students, whether or not they attend the School District of Holmen. They would have access to the services through the Sale to Success program at the Boys and Girls Club. Any questions on the preliminary budget? Yes.
You say the transfer to Fund 46 is $250,000 each year?
It was this year, so right now it's the same. Let me go,
I didn't see that, I was just wondering.
I think it was 250 this year, and it was maybe like
it started at 10.
10 the year before.
And it has grown a little bit since. So, Chris, it's in line 178 because these are combined. So the 783,000 in line 178 is not only the transfer, but also interest earnings anticipated on the bonds and notes in the next fiscal year. So,
Forecast that 250,000 each year going forward?
I think that depends on our priorities within our general fund because that's where the money comes from. But I do know that we have much greater needs than 250,000 in long-term capital.
Sure, yep.
So, yeah, or capital needs, yep.
Okay, that's all.
Okay. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 9.6. Dr. Mueller will present the 2024 graduation date for approval on the June 12th consent agenda.
Yeah, each year we like to plan a year in advance. And so just bringing before you that to allow our families to plan also for next year's graduation, that we're proposing that the 2024 graduation will be held on Saturday, May 25th, which has been kind of a long-standing tradition that is on the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend.
All right, thank you. With the consent agenda, the board has been furnished with background materials on each item or has discussed it at a previous meeting. These will be acted upon with one vote without discussion. If a board member wants to discuss any item, it will be pulled out of the consent agenda and will be voted on separately. Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as provided. Motion by Chris,
Second.
second by Barb. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Motion passes. All right, moving on to the board debrief. I will call upon board members and ask you to present any comments or committee reports you have. Tonight, we'll start with Chris Lau.
We had a facilities meeting this evening before the board meeting. We will be bringing one policy forward for preparedness of toxic hazards to the board. It's something that the administration thought was needed. Just refers to handling toxic material and fertilizers and asbestos on the school district property. I do want to say congratulations to all the graduates and congratulations and thank you to all the retirees this evening. And then I'm really excited to see the Adaptive Sports League coming to the middle school. I really like how engaged the student body is with the senior or the high school students that are in that. So it'll be, I think, really exciting to see that at the middle school level as well.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Lindsay?
For a second, I thought this whole thing moved. This thing is not moving. I went on the field trip today on the Lacrosse Queen with my little guy. He's first grader at Prairie View, so that was really fun. I like all the opportunities that I'm seeing kids have for field trips, and also just everything that I heard tonight. I just want to say that I'm really impressed with things that I have been learning, such as the Stop It program. I mean, that's just incredible. And I think many of us would agree wasn't around when we were in school for being able to share concerns that you see. And love the middle school presentation and the adapted sports, and excited to see if they can expand that to the other schools and get some competition going. And also really impressed with the physical education program and all the opportunities kids have too, like the skateboarding picture and cross-country skiing and all the things. It's pretty basic too when I was in school, and it seems like the district is really paying attention to what everybody's interests are and trying to incorporate that, and just the variety of electives too. And so I just wanted to say that I'm impressed with everything, all the hard work that's going on in the district. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Maggie?
Personnel and Governance Committee met on the 17th, and we moved 31 policies to the board for first reading. We also had a trio of policies related to anti-harassment and one related to personal communication devices that will be discussed at our meeting in June. And that's the other update, is that we're meeting in June. And then I was gonna give a kudos to the team that planned the Evergreen Block Party. I thought the turnout was amazing. I know a number of us were there, were in the room. And it was a great community event. And then was also just gonna give, I guess, a shout out to really all the building staff right now. I feel like May is just a wild month. Maybe it's just my kids, but I feel like the kids are a little squirrely, and yet there's like lots of energy and effort going in to make the last few weeks of school really exciting and special. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Barb?
Yeah, I would like to say thank you to our ELA and physical education staff for providing updates on how our district is incorporating those state standards into our curriculum. I think that you've demonstrated your commitment to our students and their success, and so that was just very impressive tonight. Thank you for that. Also would like to say congratulations to Evergreen on their groundbreaking for their new playground. That project was a result of the collaboration between staff and the PTO, and they garnered outstanding community support for our students, and I just think that that was very admirable. And then finally, I just wanted to congratulate the Holmen High School forensic team because they received the state distinction in speech award.
Okay, thanks, Barb. Crystal?
Well, I want to begin with recognizing our spring sports, as all our student athletes have had put all their hard work and dedication into this season. And with honorable mention of the boys golf team with the success of winning first place for the Mississippi Valley Conference. So I just want to say thank you to those athletes for partaking in our various alternative sports. Now, moving on, the last time I was here, I gave a big happy Pacific Islander Asian Heritage Month to those who created a diverse community within the Holmen School District. With that, recently, our Hmong student organization, also known as HSO, at the Holmen High School recently hosted an HSO week. They did events like setting up a museum to even dressing in their traditional wear throughout the week. And they really were proud and happy, and they considered it one of the biggest successful weeks just to like represent who they are. And one of the biggest events was the boba shop sale that they had, which our HSL students would volunteer to make boba and sell it to our very own staff and students at the Holmen High School. So sorry for those who weren't able to get it. But I just wanted to say a big thank you to the students who were willing to try something new by purchasing the boba, and it helps funding as we're planning to do some fundraising ourselves for those in need and probably for like food pantries and such. And I'd want to say thank you for the staff who supported the idea and really came around to help our students with the boba shop. Lastly, to end my words, let's give a big congratulations to our 2023 year seniors as they will become new Holmen High School alumni. Their achievements will not go hidden, and their impact in the school will most definitely not be forgotten. With that being said, the seniors' last day at the Holmen High School will actually be this Wednesday, May 24th, and their graduation ceremony will be held on May 27th at 1 p.m. at the La Crosse Center. So please wish our senior well. With that, this concludes what I have to say, and thank you everyone for listening. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Khadijah.
Yeah, I also want to echo the congratulations to the graduating seniors. I remember, I don't want to make myself feel older, but I do remember my last day as a Holmen High School student, and I just remember it being an incredible time of community, so I hope that tradition continues. I also want to give some great congratulations to the list of folks who are retiring and thank them so much for the service to our district. I actually recognize quite a few of those names, and so I guess I can also thank them specifically for their dedication and service to me as a student in my time in the Holmen School District. It's been a while since we met, obviously. It's been a couple weeks, and in that time, we have passed both Mother's Day and Hmong American Day, so I wanted to highlight the incredible Hmong community that we have in this area and their incredible willingness to share their cultural experiences with us. I think it's such an enriching opportunity. And shout out to all the moms, all the different ways that people mother, and I think we can never miss an opportunity to hold them up. And another shout out, I guess, as well, echoing what Barb said about the curriculum folks. Again, I've always viewed this district as cutting edge and maintaining an incredibly high standard. I'm a product of this district, and I'm proud of the education that I got, and getting to see the kind of work and the effort that our teams put into this just makes me really proud to be a student from here, and also now to serve on the board of this great school district. So thank you.
All right, thank you. I just want to give a shout out to the district and all the staff for all of the safety, security, and wellness they give our staff and our students. It's not just the Stop It. I mean, I'm very proud of this award, but it's not just implementing Stop It. It is all the safety efforts that go into keeping our kids and staff safe. I think that this is definitely one of the strengths of the district, and they excel in this area. So I just want to give a shout out to that and congratulate all of you and recognize you all for your hard work. Want to also give a shout out to all the retirees. I hope to see you all at the retiree reception on Thursday. And also a shout out to all the seniors graduating on Saturday. I look forward to meeting all you well there as well. So that's what we have for our report outs. Moving on, the board has been provided with notes from the April 17th Student Achievement and Learning and the April 19th Personnel and Governance Committee meetings. So please take a look at those. In regards to our upcoming board schedule, we have Senior Recognition Night at 6:30 at the Fine Arts Center. We have the retiree reception on the 25th at 3:30 at the Fine Arts Center. And we have the high school graduation at 1 p.m. at the La Crosse Center on May 27th. So if any of the board members are able to make those, it's nice to show up and meet all these folks. The last day of school is June 2nd. That's coming up very quickly. As mentioned before, we have a Personnel and Governance meeting at 5 PM on June 5th. There's the Finance Committee meeting on June 12th at 5 PM, and also a board meeting on June 12th at 7 PM. So the Student Achievement and Learning, Finance, and Personnel and Governance Committees are advancing 48 policies to the board for a first reading. So you guys know what you're doing every night. If approved, the policies will become effective on July 1st, 2023. And I guess with that, is there any other business that needs to come before the board at this time? All right, if not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Chris has moved.
Second.
Barb has seconded the meeting at 8:30 PM. Motion carried. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay.